All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Menachem Av, the Tilson and Wohl families, for dedicating all the Shirma and Droshos this month from Eretz YIsrael, sending their love from Eretz YIsrael, and inviting us, Emir Hashem, to come and join them. Our week of learning sponsors, Nathan and Beth Adler, in memory of Nathan's father, Benjamin Adler, HaChaver, Boruch, Mordechai, Ben, Morenu, Rav, Nosson, Zichron Livracha. Our week of learning sponsors, Leah Sol, wishing a Mazel Tov to Avraham Zeesy Silber on the birth of their son. Baruch Hashem, the Bishop of Kerbisha Tova Umatzlachas, and his parents should be Zocha to Megadol him, the Torah, the Chopa, Ulamaisim Tovim. And Leah Sol also dedicating a week of learning, wishing a Mazel Tov to Robyn Schaffer Chet Wyman on their upcoming marriage. Bisha Tova Umatzlachas Chasan and Kala should be Zocha sent under the Chopa, and the Eretz Hashem build a beautiful home together. But with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Today's daf is Samech 65, and we are picking up literally the last 5 words on Samech Talmud 64b. Itmar. Ravuna Amarav. So let's remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit. We have this raging, as I said yesterday, raging, out of control, machlokes, between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanon, namely about the nature of a sale. Do we say that mocher ba'ayin yafe mocher or mocher ba'ayin ra mocher? When a person sells property, ultimately, again, do they do it with a sense of generosity? Essentially, again, the seller includes everything. Or do we say mocher ba'ayin ra, that a seller sells in a more what we'll call stingy fashion? Then, in other words, the seller will include what he has to include, but the Lamaisa, again, nothing more. Nothing more. This is our fundamental machlokes. Rabbi Akiva holds mocher ba'ayin yafe mocher. When the seller sells, he sells with incredible generosity and therefore includes everything. And the Rabbanan hold mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher. That ultimately, again, the seller includes what he has to, but absolutely nothing more. So we have not reached resolution. In Eretz Hashem, our goal is to reach resolution today on this. Itmar, Rafuna Amarav. So Rafuna said the name of Rav, we'll say Tavav Samachay 65a, Halacha Kedivrei Chachamim. The halacha is like the Chachamim, namely, that mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher. Seller sells what he is absolutely obligated to do, but absolutely nothing more. Now, again, we'll see if that's the actual halacha l'maisa, but that's what Rav is saying. Rabbi Yomi Bar Abba Amr Shmuel, halach Rabbi Akiva. Okay, and Rabbi Yomi Bar Abba says the name of Shmuel. That ultimately, again, the halach is like Rabbi Akiva. That mocher va'ayin yafe mocher. So we'll say. So now, here's what's interesting. What started originally as a machlokes Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanon is now a machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Right? So Rav holds that the halacha is like the Chachamim, mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher, and Shmuel holds that the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, mocher ba'ayin yafe mocher. So this is our machlokes. Amir Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Ravuna. So Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba said to Ravuna, "V'hazim ninsigin amrise kamei derav hilchasak Rabbi Akiva v'lo amrali v'lo midi." So it's fascinating. So Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba says to Ravuna, but many times I stood in front of Rav and I said in front of Rav that the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva. That the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva, right? And ultimately, again, Rav never said anything to me. He never said anything to me. So Rav was just on record as saying before that halacha l'maisa, that the halacha follows the Rabbanon, namely mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher. So now Rav Huna is saying many times, I said before Rav that the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva, and he never said anything to me. Amrle supposed to say, this is fascinating. Amrle hechi tunisa. So I said, this is fascinating. So Rav Huna said to Rabbi Yirmiyah, tell me, when you said over the halacha in the name of Rabbi Akiva, what position did you attribute to Rabbi Akiva? Oh, Amalei Ibcha Tanina. Oh yeah, so Rabbi Yirmiyah said, the truth is, our Masor is actually to flip it. That it's actually, again, Rabbi Akiva who holds mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher, and the Chum will hold that mocher ba'ayin yafe mocher. So I'll say, so therefore, again, to which Ravuna San Mishum Hachi lo amar l'chav lo midi. That's why Rav never corrected you, because okay, your attribution was opposite, but lamaisa the halacha was the way that Rav paskins. In other words, Rav paskins that mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher. So just the difference is you were attributing that opinion to Rabbi Akiva, whereas everyone else really attributes that opinion ultimately again to to the Chachamim. But the bottom line position of Rav still remained intact, namely, Mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher. That when a seller sells, he sells only what he is absolutely obligated to do and nothing more. I will say, there's a fascinating Musar Haskell, sometimes it's almost as if over here that what you see from Rav is he wasn't as worried about who said what. He was just much more worried about the bottom line, right? In other words, so whether it's Rabbi Akiva or whether it's the Chachamim, that Lamaisa, the Iker is to get to the core halacha. And so in Rav's worldview, the core halacha was mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher. When the seller sells, he sells only what he is absolutely obligated to do. There is no additional level of generosity included in this, and that's it. The Chacham said it, Rabbi Akiva said it. It's almost as if that's a little bit of a detail that may not even matter as much. Even though, again, generally we are fixated on attribution, it seems to be Rav was much more fixated ultimately on the bottom line halacha. So it's interesting, in life sometimes, especially when you work on collaborative efforts. So, there's Yetzer Hara in everything. There's Yetzer Hara in everything. So us, the Yetzer Hara in collaborative efforts, who's going to get the credit? Who's going to get the covet? Right? At the end of the day, who's going to be put up on the pedestal? And so it's important in life to recognize that sometimes it's really not, or often, maybe even all the time, who gets the credit is absolutely irrelevant. What matters? That the job gets done. And the greatest credit and the greatest covet is knowing that you had a chelik in getting the job done. You were the dominant one, you were the secondary one. It was your idea, it wasn't your idea. That's irrelevant. What's relevant is getting the job done. So it's almost, you see from here, that like in Rav's view, Rabbi Akiva, the Chachamim, that's almost like a detail. The Iker is, tell me what the halacha is. And the halacha is, mocher ba'ayin, Rav's halacha. Mocher ba'ayin ra mocher. Really very interesting. We'll see, in general, in life, when we're able, it's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing. We're human beings. We all have an ego. Covet is very nice. But once a person is able to kind of put that ego on the side and focus on just getting the job done, it's incredible, first of all, in general, how liberating it is once a person doesn't need covet. I mean, I don't know, one day I'll get there. We're human beings. Everybody likes covet. But it is liberating. Those moments where you're able to kind of transcend your ego a little bit, it is incredibly liberating, to ultimately to be able to let go and to be able to focus on getting the job done. And halacha l'maaseh, so much more gets done. Then even, Musar Haskell from Rav. I'm only Ravina Ravashi. So Ravina says Ravashi, Lema azdula tamahu. Ultimately, again, so both Rav and Shmuel went according to their respective reasoning. What did they both say? So both say, so now again, remember, what we've done over here is we've made the machlokes, Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanon, into a machlokes, Rav and Shmuel. That's what's unfolding over here. So again, remember, we're assuming right now, let's just go with the idea that Rav holds like Shmuel, namely, mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher, Rav holds like the Rabbanon, thank you. And Shmuel holds like Rabbi Akiva, mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. Okay, so now so let's say that this machlokes Rav and Shmuel is actually an already established machlokes. Right? In other words, we've already established as far as Amar Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Both say, listen to this. So now we're going to take these positions of Rav and Shmuel. So again, Rav like the Chachamim, mocher ba'ayin ra'a. Shmuel like Rabbi Akiva, mocher ba'ayin yafa, and we're going to plug it into the following case. This is fascinating. Ha'achin shechalku. Both say brothers. Let's call it Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi. Had a father. His name was Yaakov. Yaakov died. Yaakov left them in a state. Let's assume for a moment again, there's no Bechar, right? There was a firstborn girl. So there's no Bechar. So therefore, three brothers dividing up the estate. Now, we'll say, the Gemara presupposes over here that the way inheritance is effectively like a sale. What does that mean? The way inheritance works is assuming that the father does not leave, specific portions to each child. So every brother owns every part of the estate. Right? In other words, their ownership interests are 100% intermingled. Now, obviously, it's not going to work. Everybody wants to own their own property. So what do? So essentially, they quote unquote sell respective portions to each other. Now, of course, there's no money that changes hands over here, but they are viewed ultimately again as sellers. So this is the premise that the Gemara is operating with. This is a machlokas in inheritance law, exactly how it works. Is it a division? Is it a sale? There are many different halachic ramifications for that, but we don't really have to. We don't have to go ahead and delve into that right now. That's what Rashbam says. Ha'achin shechalko shnehem mochrin zelazeh. So the way it works in inheritance law is that when brothers divide up the estate, they are essentially looked at as sellers to one another. Right? Reuven sells what was technically his to Shimon. Shimon sells what was technically his to Reuven. They both sell to Levi. Levi sells to both of them. And then everybody ends up with their portion. Okay, so now watch this. Ha'achin shechalku ein lahem lo derech lo ze'alzeh. So now watch this. So now let's say again, they divide up their estates. And it turns out that, for example, Reuven has an exterior field, and Shimon has an interior field. And Shimon's field can only be accessed going through Reuven's field. Well, the Gemara says over here, interestingly enough, the division of property does not automatically give Shimon a right of way. If he wants a right of way, what does he have to do? So in other words, he has his parcel of land, but if he wants his right of way, what does he have to do? He has to purchase it from Reuven, right? Velo sulamos zalzeh. Nor do they have the automatic ability to go ahead and position ladders, right, on each other's property. Velo chalonos. Nor do they have window rights, right? Window rights means that either party has the ability to erect a wall, even if it blocks out the sun from the other's windows. Velo amas hamayim zalzeh. Nor do they have the ability to dig irrigation ditches that go across the other's property. V'yizaru bahen, and be very careful with these halachas, shalachas kavos, saying that these are established halachas. I will say, so what do you see from here? Now remember, this is Rav Nachman stating the name of Shmuel. What do you see from here? If we say that inheritance is essentially treated like a sale, what is the Gemara saying? That when the brothers divide up the property, essentially what they do is they give each other title. And that's it. So what does that show? Mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher. That's Shmuel in accordance with the Chachamim. So all the Gemara is just trying to point out over here is these positions of Rav and Shmuel.
I thought you said Rav. I thought you said Shmuel. You said Shmuel.
Sorry. My apologies. Good. Right. This is Shmuel, correct. So this is Shmuel over here, but Shmuel saying in this case over here, sorry. This is Shmuel saying in this case, Mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher. Mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. And therefore, ultimately, again, when he gets his portion, he gets everything, and no one has the ability to encroach upon that. Good. V'Rav Amar, Rav says that Lamaisa again they have. Ta'alach Lamaisa they have. Take a look at Rashbam for just a moment. Sorry. Look at the Rashbam. V'Rav Amar yesh lahen, the mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher, u'meshayir li'atzmo b'ma shemachar li'echav, davar hatzarech lo, kigon va'ora. So kigon derech va'ora. So I'll say. So remember again, this is also going with the attributions as we just mentioned before. So the Maisa, what the whole thing we're just trying to point out over here, sorry for the mix-up, is that halacha the Maisa, the positions of Rav and Shmuel are not new to what it is that we're learning over here, but rather, again, these positions ultimately have been espoused by Rav and Shmuel respectively beforehand. First of all, just take a quick look. Let me just catch you up on the Rashbam for just a moment. The Rashbam says, Eilan derech za'alzeh, im chalku shnei sados, echad natal chitzon, ve'echad natal pnimi, ve'ina pnimi yachol likanis lisadeu, ela derech chitzon. This is what we just said before, right? Reuven has an exterior field, Shimon has an interior field. The only way for Shimon to access his field is through Reuven's field. So what's the halacha? B'derech shaya aviv nichnas, ein lo lepnimi derech ala chitzon, mishum democher ba'ayin yafe mocher, v'lo shir derech li'atzmo. So I will say, so this is very interesting. So remember, the reason why this is a little bit, not confuse you, the reason why I messed up a little bit is as follows. Remember, this is a two-pronged sale. Right? So remember again, the brothers are selling to each other. So now watch this. Shimon, right? Shimon has the interior field. Reuven has the exterior field. So they're selling their rights to each other. Because according to Shmuel, mocher ba'ayin yafe mocher, so what ends up happening? Neither brother ends up retaining rights for himself. In other words, when they give over the property, they're giving over everything even to what? Even to their own detriment. So now, sorry for the confusion before. So now, when Shimon is selling his rights to Reuven and Reuven is selling his rights to Shimon, Shimon ends up with an interior field without what? Without a right of way. Without a right of way. So that's what it means. See, that's why this is different. Because remember, again, up until now, when we were speaking about Mocher Ba'ayin Yofer, Mocher Ba'ayin Ra, there were two parties, right? And one party was the seller, and one party was the buyer. In this case of the brothers, essentially what you have is every person is a seller and a buyer, right? So therefore, again, interestingly enough, when we say that Shimon ends up with no right of way through Reuven's exterior field, why is that? Because mocher ba'ayin yafe mocher, right? Everyone ultimately, again, is selling with complete generosity, which means they're yielding all of their rights. They're giving away everything, which means Shimon walks here with an interior field with no right of way. Okay? So that's the position of Shmuel, in accordance ultimately, again, with Rabbi Akiva, that mocher ba'ayin yafe mocher. And that's why, again, essentially, no one has any rights in the other's property because they've all ceded everything to each other because they're selling with complete generosity. Okay, good. We're back on track. Now, the Gemara says, that's Shmuel. V'Rav Amar, Yishla, back to the Gemara. Rav says, they do have rights. They do have rights. So Rav will say, no. Shimon has a right of way to get to his field, just like they have ladder rights, placing ladders, just like they can't go ahead and impede sunlight through building of walls on the other property as well. So we'll say, so what do you see from there? What's Rav? So Rav's position is mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher, just like the position of the HaChaver. Now in this case, again, what that means is, in this situation is, everyone retains the rights that they need in order to properly go ahead and utilize the divided property. Good. So therefore, Rabbi says, all the Gemara suggesting over here is, by the way, this is not the first time Rav and Shmuel have had this machlokes. This is a pre-existing machlokes as well. Fine. Beautiful. To which the Gemara says, tzricha. The truth is, these cases, in other words, in general, whenever you see redundant cases, the obvious question is, why don't they both cases? The Gemara is going to suggest these aren't really redundant cases. So remember, again, what you have over here are two different scenarios. One in what we'll call just a basic sale case, right? Where again you have Rav saying the halacha is like the Chachamim mocher ba'ayin ra, Shmuel like Rabbi Akiva mocher ba'ayin yafe. Then you have an inheritance case. So the Gemara says you need both cases. I'll tell you why. So you both say, I need the inheritance case. Why do I need the inheritance case? Because halacha l'maisa, maybe it's in the inheritance case that Rav says mocher ba'ayin ra. Why does he say mocher ba'ayin ra? Because each son essentially says, I want to be able to utilize this field, to utilize this property, as my father utilized it. So think about this for just a moment, right? If you're Shimon, and now you're getting a portion of the interior field. So when Father Yaakov used the field, he was able to traverse it and get to whenever he wanted. So Yaakov says, now I'm inheriting the rights of my father. I want to be able to use the field as my father used it. So maybe this has nothing to do with mocher ba'ayin ra, mocher ba'ayin yafeh, but it's just a din in inheritance law. After all, when it comes to inheritance, what does the pasuk say? Tachas avosecha yihiyu banecha. Well, so the Torah itself, when it discusses, I mean, there's a pasuk in Tehillim, but Lamais again, literally, Tachas avosecha yihiyu banecha, under the fathers will be the sons. In other words, that part of what inheritance means is not only do you receive title, but you receive usage. In other words, I have the ability to use the property as my father did before me. And that's why Shimon retains right of way to his interior property, not because of mocher ba'ayin ra, but because of inheritance. Maybe in the previous case, in just a stam case of a sale, maybe Rav agrees with Shmuel, the mocher ba'ayin yofeh. And if it would have just said, the sale case, Amar Shmuel. Maybe it's in the sale case, the regular sale case that Shmuel holds, like Rabbi Akiva, that mocher ba'ayin yofeh, aval baha ema moldi leila Rav. But maybe in the inheritance case, Shmuel agrees with Rav that again, as an inheritor, you have the right to use the field as your father used it. Therefore, again, tzricha. So therefore, we'll say we need both cases. So we'll say, so bottom line, interestingly enough, what the Gemara wanted to suggest. Remember, why did we bring down the inheritance case? What was the point of that? The point of that was just to reinforce the previously held positions of Rav and Shmuel. That Rav holds like the Chachamim, Mocher Ba'ayin Ra, Shmuel holds like Rabbi Akiva, Mocher Ba'ayin Yafa. The inheritance case kind of drops beautifully into that model, which the Gemara says, not necessarily. It may, but it may not. It could very well be that inheritance is just its own animal. And especially Rav, the reason why Rav holds that every brother retains the previously established usage rights or rights of way. It's nothing to do with Mocher Ba'ayin Ra. It's a din of inheritance. That inheritance doesn't just give you title. Inheritance gives you the same level of usage as your father before you had it. So, but maybe in general, Rav might hold like Shmuel, Mocher Ba'ayin Yafeh. So therefore, again, I will say, it turns out that the inheritance case may or may not bolster and concretize the respective positions of Rav and Shmuel. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman Rav Huna. Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, halacha kivasin or halacha kivasaychu. So I will say, here we go. So remember again. So Rav Nachman asks Rav Huna. Rav Nachman asks Rav Huna. So remember, Rav Nachman paskin like Shmuel, right? Who paskin like Rabbi Akiva of Mocher Ba'ayin Yafa Mocher. So now Rav Nachman asks Rav Huna, who does the halacha follow? Is the halacha like us, or is the halacha like you? So Amalei Hilchasa Kavasaychu. So interesting, Rav Huna said to Rav Nachman, the halacha is like you, like Rabbi Akiva, or like Shmuel, like Rabbi Akiva, Mocher Ba'ayin Yafa Mocher. Why? Demakrivasu lebava dereish kalusa deshrichi dayani. Because Rav Nachman, a little bit of Rav Huna said Rav Nachman, because you are close to the Reish Kalusa, right? The Reish Kalusa ultimately, again, was the head of Babylonian Jewry. And because you're close to the Reish Kalusa, the Dayanim, the judges, used to hang out, used to adjudicate cases in the house of the Reish Kalusa. So therefore, again, Rav Huna says to Rav Nachman, you have a lot more access to actually like daily halacha l'maisa, how things are actually being adjudicated and being paskin. Therefore, again, your position is more authoritative. And the Rashbam points out over here, Rav Nachman wasn't simply close to the Reish Kalusa, but rather, again, he was the son-in-law of the Reish Kalusa. So therefore, again, Rav Huna says to Rav Nachman, the halacha follows you, and therefore I will say the Gemara seems to say that the halacha follows Rav Nachman, who paskins like Shmuel, who paskins like Rabbi Akiva, namely Mocher Ba'ayin Yafa Mocher. Now, hold on, we're gonna get to this in just a little bit. Let's first see the rest of the sugya. Itmar, Shnei Batim Zeh Lifnim Mizeh. So we'll say, so now you have two fields or two homes, literally again one inside of the other. So there's an exterior field, we call it Reuben's field, and then there's exterior field and interior field. Interior field can only be accessed through walking through exterior field or home. It doesn't matter, home or field. So we'll say, Shnei Batim Zeh Lifnim Mizeh. So we'll say, so now what's the halacha? Shnehem. So now we'll say, I own both of these properties, and now I'm selling them off to Reuben and to Shimon. So Shnei B'mecher, Shnei B'matana, Ilam Derech Zal Zeh. So I'll say, so if I sold both of them or I gifted both of them, Ein Lohem Derech Zal Zeh. So they have no right of way, one upon the other. Kol Shekein Chitzim B'matana Pnim B'mecher. All the more so if I gifted the outer field and sold the inner one. Now we'll say, now the Gemara is working under an interesting assumption over here, which is that even if you hold Mocher Ba'ayin Ra'ah, it's matana ba'ayin yafa. And the truth is, it makes a lot of sense, right? In other words, I understand when I'm selling something, so I'll say, there's so much psychology behind all of this. Remember, from the Gemara's perspective, when are you selling property? Only under duress, right? Remember, again, we saw this before, every transaction has an element of ones associated with it. People just didn't sell stuff unless they had to. So therefore, if I'm selling something, there's a level of ones, which Pashtus means I'm going to sell what I have to, right? But I'm not including anything else. Matana, on the other hand, is discretionary, right? Matana, I give matana if I want to. So therefore, again, it's interesting that the halacha automatically presupposes that matana always comes with a healthy dose of generosity. So therefore, again, the Gemara says like this, I'm selling two properties to Reuben and Shimon, right? Reuben has the exterior one, Shimon has an interior one. If they're both through a sale, or they're both through a gift, so they're on equal footing, then the assumption is that Shimon has no automatic right of way through his field. If on the other hand, if I sold to Reuben the exterior, or I gave Reuben the exterior field as a matana, higher level, and I sold the interior field to Shimon, then all the more so Shimon does not have an automatic right of way. What happens if the outer field was a sale, and the inner field was a gift. Inner field was a gift. Savra mina ein lahen derech zeh al zeh. I would have thought, at least initially, maybe there is no right of way. Velohi, but it's not true. Milo tandu inaframendra amorem bemocher. So I'll say, when do we say ultimately, if you want to hold that mocher ba'ayin ra'ah, mocher, and therefore there's no automatic right of way, when is that? So that's with the sale. But when you give a gift, a gift is always done with complete generosity. So I'll say, it's interesting, by the way, right? Here's what's fascinating. The Gemara is saying that a gift is always given with complete generosity. Yet, what do Chazal say? Sonei matanos yichya. Right? If you go ahead and you despise gifts, you live a long life. Why? What's the pshat with that? Because gifts are often not given with complete generosity. Right? So often in life, gifts are given with strings attached. And if you take it, it could come with a lot of baggage. So which one is it? Are gifts given with generosity or gifts given with strings attached? So it's almost like there's the ideal and then there's the actual. Right? The ideal is that a gift is always given with complete generosity. The actual is that sometimes it comes with some significant strings attached to it. So the Gemara says, whenever you give a gift, you throw in everything. Gift is gives complete generosity. Alma mandiyov matana ba'ayin yofa yoiv. Whenever you give a gift, I will say a gift is always assumed to be given ba'ayin yofa, and therefore hachinami mandiyov matana ba'ayin yofa yoiv. So I will say this is interesting. So as much as there is a machlokes about mecher when it comes to a sale, is a sale done ba'ayin yofa or ba'ayin ra? Right, generosity, not so much generosity. Everyone agrees that a gift is always given with generosity. So I will say this is fascinating. So just to take a very simple case, I own two fields, an exterior one, an interior one. I gift my interior field to Ruvain. The automatic assumption is that comes with a right of way. That does come with a right of way attached to it, which is really quite fascinating. By a sale, that's machlokes Rabbi Kiva and Rabbanan. So how do we pass in? So first of all, just in general, by a sale, right? You just want to nail down. Do we paskin mocher ba'ayin? So we have two camps, right? We have the Rav Nachman, Shmuel, Rabbi Aviva camp. That is mocher ba'ayin yofa. That way, right? You sell with generosity. And then I have the Rav Huna Rav Chachamim camp, and that's mocher ba'ayin ra'ah mocher. So how do we pass this? The Rambam passes in Hilchos Mechira, Paragraph Hey Halacha Gimel. He writes shekol hamocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. Ultimately, again, he holds that halacha l'maisa. Again, anyone who sells, ultimately, sale is always done ba'ayin yafa. We assume that a sale is done with complete generosity. And I will say again, remember, we don't have time to go through it now, but once you have this halacha, it drops in like to a lot of the aforementioned cases. So therefore, again, for example, just to show you how this, just to plug it back to how this whole thing started, right? So I sell Ruvain my house. I sell Ruvain my house with the chaser, right? So remember again, what did we establish when you sell someone your bias? What's not included? What's not included in the sale? The bar, right? The bar is mine. But yet, what don't I have? A right of way. Right? Why? Because mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. Because the assumption is when I sell with complete generosity, which means I sold everything. So now I have this interesting case where I own the bar, but I have to now purchase back a right of way in order to access it. What's the converse case? The converse case is I'm not selling my house, I'm keeping my house. I sold Ruvain my bar. Right? I sold Ruvain my bar. What's included in that sale? Right of way. Right? Why? Because mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. So that's how the Rambam paskins. Mocher ba'ayin yafa. The Rambam also goes down. He also discusses this case that we just mentioned before about the two homes, one with mecher, one with matana. But we're going to leave that. We're going to leave it on the Serosei. But again, major sugya. And now halacha l'maisa again. Mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. We spoke about this yesterday also that we paskin this way. Not just halacha l'maisa, but hashkafa l'maisa. Mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. How important in life it is to go through life with an ayin yafa, right? With an ayin tova. The ability to see the good in people, the ability to see the good in situations, the ability to recognize that everything is hashkachas Hashem, everything is divine providence, even if it hurts and even if it doesn't feel good. Whatever you go through in life, whatever, so to speak, transactions you encounter, whatever kind of people you encounter, always try to go ahead and encounter them with an ayin yafa, with a good eye. An eye that sees the good in situations, an eye that sees the good in people, an eye that sees the good in the circumstances in life. Halacha l'maisa and hashkafa l'maisa. Mishnah. We'll say but we're not done. But there's more. Hamochas habayis. Both says, listen to this. This is fascinating. So now, remember, we're getting into the details over here about when you sell something, like what's included in that sale. So I'm selling a house to Ruvain, machras hadelas. So I said, this is really fascinating. So the door is included. Right? So we'll say, okay, it's good to know. Avalos aftech. This is great, but not the keys, right? Now we'll say, now, essentially, let me tell you the principle, and then we'll plug it in. Essentially, the halacha is like this. When you sell a house, anything that is mechubar l'karka, anything that's attached to the ground, is included in the sale. Anything that's not mechubar l'karka is not included in the sale. That's pretty much the principle. So therefore, again, I sell a house. I sell the doors, right? Why do I sell the doors? Because the doors are attached to the house. So anything attached to the house. Therefore, again, our halacha l'mais included. Avalos amateh, but not the key, because the assumption is that the key is metaltalin. The key is movable. So therefore, it's not included. Machar esamach tashas kvua avalos hamitaltela. So we'll say, remember again, there's something called a mortar, right? Like a pestle and a mortar. So the pestle is like the zach, the thing that you use like to pound the stuff, right? And the mortar is the bowl. So we're going to see, by the way, I guess it was a common, these Talmudic appliances, right? So you would have a mortar, a bowl, right? Like a bowl. So if the bowl was attached to the house, or attached to the ground, then Lamaisa it's included. If it's not attached, then it's metaltalin, and therefore, again, it's not included. So Gemara says, Machar is hamachtashes, kavua avalos hamitaltelas. Machar is ha'itzterbil. So the Rashbam points out over here that this was a ring that fit around the mill. So again, also attached to the ground. Avalo es hakalas, but not the hopper. Okay, velo es hatana velo es hakirai. So I'll say, this is fascinating. Appliances not included, right? Appliances not included, right? Why were the appliances not included? Because they're not mechubar. Remember again, the Rebbe said, the Tanner and Kirayim, these were portable cooking utensils. So you could do it in the house. Actually, Bepashtos, sounds like from the Mishnah, people more often did it in the chutzner than even in the house itself. So I might say again, appliances not included in the sale of the home. So Bizman Sha'amar Lo Hu V'chol Masha B'Socho. Now, what happens if I say, Ruvain, I'm selling you my house and everything in it, on the base, Hare Kula Mechurin. Okay, so that's a different case. If I say I'm selling you the house and everything in the house, then of course that includes everything. I will say, but again, that makes sense. Rashbam points out over here, Kol hanach tashmisha metaltalin, aval sharmini tashmishta lo mizdavni, ta'af agav damar kol masha b'socha ani mocher l'cha, shelo riba v'loshon zeh, ela tashmishta miyuchadin l'bayi zeh. So the idea is, the Rashbam just points out, we'll get to this in the Gemara, when I say I'm selling you everything in the house, so by the way, we're going to see everything doesn't mean everything, but everything does mean are these common household utensils. So again, here's the rule. A sale of a house includes the house and anything that is mechubar l'karka, anything that is attached to the house, attached to the ground. That's included in the sale. Anything that is movable, not included in the sale. If I say I'm selling you the house and lashon is v'chol masha b'socho, everything inside of it means the items normally used as part of daily household living. Again, we'll define what is included, what's not excluded. Fine, beautiful. Let's see the Gemara. We'll say our Mishnah does not reflect the view of Rabbi Meir. Why? The Rabbi Meir, because according to Rabbi Meir, ha'amar machar es hakerem, machar tashmishe kerem. So we'll say this is very interesting, because Rabbi Meir holds as follows. Rabbi Meir holds that Allah if I sell Ruvain a vineyard, right, included in the sale of a vineyard are any of the utensils commonly used in the vineyard itself. So Rabbi Meir holds in general, when you sell something, so by definition, the items associated with the use of that place are included. So the Gemara would say, according to Rabbi Meir, if you sell a house, so what we call like normal household items, I don't know, a tanur, a kirayim, things like that would be included in the sale, but the Mishnah says it's not. So obviously Mishnah does not reflect the view of Rabbi Meir. Take a look for the Mishnah, the Rashba, I'm sorry. Leah Masnisin, Diktani lo machar machteshes hamital lo krai meir, di krai meir ha'amar parakamoch esasino v'raisa v'gimara, machar kerem, machar tashmisha kerem kigon kanim sheve kerem shein tzarcha. So again, Rabbi Meir holds that anything that is part of the use of the vineyard is included in the sale of the vineyard. So therefore, again, our Mishnah must not reflect the view of Rabbi Meir, because our Mishnah holds that even things that are part of the function of the house are not included. To which the Gemara says no. We'll say 3 lines down from the top, 65b samachem beis. I feel Rabbi Meir. Oh, the truth is, our Mishnah could even be Rabbi Meir. So what's going on over here? Listen to this. Hasam kaviyah, hacha lo kaviyah. So we'll say this is very interesting. In the case of the vineyard, what does Rabbi Meir include? Those things that are not only always used inside of the vineyard, but are almost like fixed in place inside of the vineyard. Now, not fixed in place as mechober lekarka, but that they're never removed from the vineyard. Take a look at the Rashba for just a moment. Hasam kaviyah, it's the last short line. Hasam kaviyah, kilomar hasam b'd Rabbi Meir, ika l'meimar d'l'ayra Rabbi Meir ela b'tashmishin kavuin li'olam b'socha kerem. He's talking about things or utensils that are solely used inside of the vineyard. She'ein mazizin osam misham li'olam. You never remove them from the vineyard. Even though again they're not attached to the ground. So this is very interesting. The Gemara making a suggestion. A lot of the items, the unattached items mentioned in the Mishnah, the machtashas, right, your mortar, or even your tanner and kirayim, these are movable things. So number one, often they're taken out of the house and used outside of the house. And the Rashba also points out sometimes they're lent out to other people. This is very different. So apparently the way it worked in vineyards is whatever utensils were there for vineyard use, they remained in the vineyard and they were not lent out. So they weren't attached to the ground, but they were almost like permanently found inside of the vineyard. So maybe it's tafka, those kind of things that Rabbi Meir holds are included in the sale, but stam other things that are sometimes in the house, out of the house, are not included in the sale, and therefore, again, our Mishnah could even be reflective of the view of Rabbi Meir. To which the Gemara says, I will say, but here's what's interesting. So remember again, the Mishnah said that when you sell the house, the door is included. What's not included? The key. I will say, here's what's interesting about the key. The fact that we're mentioning, right? In other words, when you say the door is included, but the key is not. So the Gemara understands over here, that means that the key is like the door. Otherwise, they wouldn't be mentioned in the same sentence. How so? So the Gemara said, Ma delas tekvua, av machteach tekvua. So I'll say, what kind of key are we talking about over here? Just like the door is fixed in place, we're talking about a key that was also always left in the lock. Always left in the lock. So we'll say, that's the key. It's not like we were thinking about before, that it's a key, you lock your door and then you put the key in your pocket. No, this was a key that was just commonly left in the lock itself. Yet with all of that, the Mishnah says, it's not included. Now, we'll say, now a key left in the lock sounds a lot like what? So vineyard utensils left in the vineyard. They sound a lot alike. Yet, again, even that key is not included in the sale. So therefore, what does the Gemara say? You're right. We tried to align them, but it turns out that our Mishnah is not reflective of the view of Rabbi Meir. So we'll say, just, by the way, kind of just keep this on the side a little bit, that whereas our Mishnah seems to be indicating that whenever you sell property, whatever is attached to the ground, or at least we'll call it the sale of a house, whatever is attached to the house is included in the sale. Whatever is not attached, right, is not included in the sale. Okay? That's the position of our Mishnah. Just keep in mind the position of Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir seems to say, at least with a vineyard, whatever utensils are commonly used in the vineyard and left in the vineyard are included in the sale. Just keep it in the back of your mind. Let's go. Hamocher sabayis, machar es hadel. Hamocher es habayis, machar es hadelas, v'es hanagar, v'es haminal. So let's listen to this. If you sell a house, so again, the Bryce over here is saying, you sell a house, you have sold the door, and the nagar, and the bolt, nagar is the bolt, v'es haminal, and the lock, avalo es hamafteach, but not the key. So we'll say, fine, not the key. So, machar es hamachteshes, you've sold the mortar. We'll say, so again, remember, the mortar is the bowl. is the bowl, right? So you have sold the bowl that is chakuka. Now we'll say chakuka means, chakuk literally means engraved. What this means is it's a built-in. It's a built-in, right? Now again, we'll discuss exactly how it's becoming chakuka. The Rashbam says over here, sela hayotze min hakosel v'chakak shamach teshes. So here's how the Rashbam goes ahead and illustrates this. So the Rashbam says like this: imagine for a moment you have a stone wall. There's a stone that protrudes from the wall. A stone that protrudes from the wall. What do? You carve out a bowl into that stone. So that's the machteshas hachakuka. Very convenient as well. So machteshas hachakuka, avalo sakavua. But listen to this. But if you had a bowl that you attached to the wall of the house, that's not included. Right? Interesting, right? So if you had a stone in the wall that you carved out into a bowl, so that bowl isn't included in the sale. But if you had a bowl that you attached to the wall, that is not included in the sale. Okay, we'll discuss that distinction. The Rashbam says over here, "Avalo sakavua shaisa chakuka va'asuya." Sorry, shaisa chakuka v'kavo ve'achar kach kava b'karka. So it was a separate individual utensil, and then you attached it to the wall or to the ground. Ultimately, that is not included. So the Gemara says, so again, that's the mill ring, right? That's the ring around the mill. So that's attached to the ground. Avalo as hakalas, but not the hopper. Lo as hatanur, v'lo as hakirayim, v'lo as harechayim. Okay, so you don't include the tanur, the oven, the stove, or the mill. Right? Rechayim is usually a hand mill. So these items again are not attached to the ground, and therefore aloch alamais again not included in the sale. Fine. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, kalimachom lekarka, harik karka. So ultimately, Rabbi Eliezer says anything that is attached to the ground, ultimately, again, is considered part of the ground. I will say, now, in all these cases, Rashbam points out, the only thing that Rabbi Eliezer is arguing on is the Machteshas case, is the mortar case. So remember again, according to Tanakama, if you have a stone and you carve out a mortar, right, a mortar bowl into that, then that's included in the sale. But if you took a bowl and you attached it to the wall, that is not included in the sale. Rabbi Eliezer says that is included in the sale, because Rabbi Eliezer holds anything attached to the ground, whether it started out that way or it didn't start out that way. If it's currently attached, it's included in the sale of the home. Now both say, now listen to this. Ultimately, again, but if I sell a house and I say, Ruvain, I'm selling you the house, and everything that is inside of it, all of these aforementioned items are included. Because I will say, all of these items are considered to be household items. So therefore, again, if I say I'm selling you my house and all of the household items and everything inside of it, all of these previously mentioned items are included. Remember, now this is what we said before. Even when you say, I'm selling you my house and everything inside of it, so remember, that doesn't include everything necessarily on the property. So for example, whether you said, I'm selling you a house, or I'm selling you my house with everything inside of it, here's what is never included in the sale of a home. So we'll say again, we like have smicha on this topic already, right? This I know, right? So again, it never is going to include the bar, the bet, the dus. And we'll say, it says that distinction between a bar and a dus. What was the distinction? Bar is just a hole in the ground. Dus has cemented, plastered, or bricked walls, right? So again, those items are never included, and here we're throwing in over here also additionally the yitzia. Yitzia is an annex. It's an annex. Again, we'll discuss exactly what that is as well. So we'll say, so therefore, fundamental machlokas. Tanaba. So we'll say, no, stop over here for today. So just to point out, really what we're going to see, get ready, I'm going to be covering attractions, the raging machlokas, raging, out of control, is the machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Eliezer regarding what is the definition of mechuber l'karka. According to the Tanakama, it appears the definition of mechuber is literally something carved out of the ground. According to Rabbi Eliezer, but let's say according to the Tanakama, if you took a kli and attached it to the house, attached to the ground, that is not mechuber l'karka. Rabbi Eliezer says the definition of mechuber l'karka is literally anything that is attached to the ground. Whether it started as a detached, separate utensil or not is irrelevant. If it's currently attached, it's considered mechuber l'karka. Mikvah ramifications of that in Eretz Hashem in tomorrow's daf. Halacha ma'aseh tomorrow's daf. What I was saying, shkoyach. All right, Chaver Zoom. Have a great day, everyone.